begin with Mr. Frank Cassaday. Frank Cassaday worked for Kellogg Brown and Root as an ice plant operator in 2004 and 2005 in the country of Iraq. His work in Fallujah, Iraq coincided with the invasion of Fallujah by the U.S. Marines in November of 2004. Prior to his service in Iraq, Mr. Cassaday worked in refrigeration, air conditioning, and diesel generator maintenance. Mr. Cassaday, thank you very much for being here. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Frank Cassaday. I was an independent contractor for Kellogg Brown and Root, also known as KBR, in Iraq from July 2004 to May of 2005. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today to explain the waste that I saw while working in Iraq. I first served as an ice plant operator at Camp Webster at Al-Assad, Iraq, and also worked in various locations on electrical projects, construction, and laundry. I observed burn pits throughout my time in Iraq, which resulted in millions of U.S. taxpayers' dollars being wasted. Burn pits were used by the military and others to dispose of still usable equipment and items that were no longer needed for a particular project, might need minor repair, or were difficult to transport or find storage. These pits were burning 24 hours a day. I saw huge amounts of new plywood and other lumber ordered to be taken by forklift a day to the burn pit. It looked as though the rows of plywood and lumber were over 200 feet long and 8 to 10 feet high. This lumber was to be used to build the new MWR building, which was already framed in steel and had to be torn down. The rest of the lumber was supposed to be used in construction in the camp. Instead, the lumber was burnt. I saw large 10-foot deep trenches dug in the sand where computers, electronic equipment, and military items that could not be burned were buried. I was told that it is cheaper to destroy everything and mark it off as destroyed by the war than to pay for the transport by truck and find adequate storage. In Fallujah, I saw explosives in the burn pits. There were times when these explosives would go off while I and my co-workers were disposing of waste items. In Fallujah, I observed Iraqis scavenging in the burn pits for items that they could use. They would jump in the back of my truck and try to remove items I was not discarding. At Al-Assad, a large waste dump and burn pit had many items that appeared to be in perfectly good condition, yet were discarded. I saw flak vests, jungle-style combat boots, field jackets, ammunition crates, tires, inner tubes, and a large volume of food items. During my time as an ice plant operator at Camp Webster, I noticed numerous illegal activities and rules violations by KBR managers and employees. Ice was a very valuable commodity in Iraq that was regularly stolen and bartered for other goods. One day, a convoy of U.S. Marines was going out of the area for several days, and they wanted 28 bags of ice. I watched as the ice plant foreman refused to give the troops the ice they wanted and offered them only 3 bags of ice. The foreman told the troops that he was only allowed to give them 2 pounds of ice per person per day, but in fact it was the foreman who made that rule. The ice foreman was cheating the troops out of ice at the same time that he was trading the ice for DVDs, CDs, food, and other items at the Iraqi shops across the street. He would change the ice tally sheets at the distribution area I worked in to make it seem as though we had handed out more ice to the Marines than we actually did. In this way, the foreman could cover up his theft and preferential treatment for his co-workers. It appeared to be routine practice for KBR employees to pad the hours and for KBR management to staff unnecessary workers on a project. At Al-Assad, 15 Americans were staffed at a small portable ice plant on the back of a tractor trailer along with about 8 third-country nationals, that's TCN employees. In this case, just 4 American KBR employees and 6 TCNs would have been sufficient to cover the entire 24-hour work cycle. KBR was billing the U.S. taxpayers for 23 employees when 10 could have done the job. The KBR ice plant supervisor was aware of KBR employees padding their billing hours. They would go to the PX, the shops, the computer room, gymnasium, and use the telephone while on the payroll at government expense. When I complained of extra work being put on me while others were not working, the supervisor punished me by putting me on the night shift, where others who complained were sent. In November of 2004, I was transferred to Fallujah to help build an ice plant. Even though the ice plant was never built in Fallujah, KBR billed the government on that contract. At Camp Fallujah, I observed the KBR ice plant supervisor and the KBR foreman stealing refrigerators and equipment from the military. My KBR foreman brought back to the camp 10 to 12 fully functioning live detonators for 155 millimeter artillery rounds, over 800 rounds of live ammunition, and 2 rocket launchers. The equipment was hidden in the KBR laydown yard. I complained to my foreman about the looting of weapons, but he told me to mind my own business. I decided to tell my camp manager about the stolen items. The next day, the Marines descended upon our camp with search dogs and found everything that I had seen. I was told that I did the right thing by reporting the stolen items. However, it seemed as though I had been punished because I was placed in a jail tent by KBR security for 2 days. The camp manager at KBR told the men who had been caught stealing that I was the person who had turned them in to the authorities. I was then placed in protective custody for 4 days. When I was finally released, the KBR manager in charge of all ice production and distribution in Iraq told the KBR camp manager that as far as he was concerned, I was to have nothing to do with any ice operations at all. The KBR ice manager was retaliating against me because the ice plant supervisor who had been caught stealing was the ice plant manager's friend. After this episode, I was forced to work in the laundry, where I saw the inflation of laundry figures. While at the laundry, the KBR supervisor told me that over half the equipment was broken. I put in several written requests for repair parts and asked the camp manager to move 2 heavy-duty washers and dryers that were stored in the warehouse to the laundry so that we could use them. No parts ever arrived. The equipment stayed in the warehouse, and the Marines suffered. The laundry was often wet when it was returned to the Marines because the equipment did not work properly. Even with these shoddy laundry facilities, I was told by the laundry supervisor that KBR charged the government $75 to just wash 1 bag of laundry, which was normally less than 15 pounds. I came to testify before you today because I saw how the troops suffered and were put at greater risk because of the shoddy work by KBR employees and the wasteful spending of KBR management. I would do anything to help the military, and I hope that my testimony today will make a difference for the troops.
Mr. Cassaday, thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for your testimony.